Hi, I'm Cheng Thom, and you're watching Ask Kai, Quick Tips for the Apocalypse, a series of short videos in which I tell you I have apocalypsed successfully, and you can too. But really, I just answer questions about sex and stuff. Okay, dear viewers, today's question is a good question. It is also a classic question, by which I mean it is a question as old as time. I will read it to you now. Our question asker asks us, I am a 32-year-old queer person, and I recently met a 21-year-old queer person whom I think is really great. We have amazing chemistry, and I know our age difference is kind of big, but also they're really mature for their age. Is it still okay to date them? So, I want to validate this question where people are like, I want to ask because I think genuinely this is a question people are wondering. How young is too young for me? How big is an age gap allowed to be before it's terrible or predatory or something? And I'm also like, oh my goodness, I really think that this question has been answered so many times in many different ways, and there are many different answers to it. I think it's a really hot button issue. I think there's generational differences in how we understand this one. And so this look of exhaustion I give you is oh yes, preparing to enter the discourse. When someone is old and someone is young, okay, and they have gotten together, do I think that is always bad? I'm just going to go on the record here saying no, I do not think it is always bad. I think it's fair to say that any situation in which someone has a significant power differential is inherently risky, and age is usually an inherent power differential. Now, that power differential isn't always as simple as some people would make it out to be. I think some people are like, the older person is always way more powerful and it's just predatory to date younger people, and sometimes, often, yes. But also, age is complex. As someone, passes into elderhood and maybe starts to experience the vulnerabilities of being an older person, are they still inherently having more power than younger people? Maybe not. And so when we think about these kinds of power differentials, I just think it's important to factor age in as a prominent one. So if someone is, as in this question, 32 and the queer they're dating is 21, I would say age is one of the first power differentials that come to mind. Yes, and then also think about money, think about race, think about gender, but you got to factor in how much power does my age really give me in this situation? And let's just not underestimate the importance of experience as a form of power. There are a lot of different things that having experience, particularly the experience that comes for a lot of people in the course of your 20s, that makes you more adept at dating and getting what you want out of a dating situation than someone maybe who's just out of their teens. We want to think about, so what happens 10 years in the future when we've maybe broken up, right? Because often people break up, let's just be real. Not just age gap romances, people just break up often. And this younger person thinks back to that relationship. Will they feel exploited? Is there the possibility that they will feel exploited? The likelihood is relatively high, right? And so we want to kind of attend to that. We want to think about this kind of trope of they're really mature for their age as well. I hear this one a lot, and I think it's probably very true. Usually the late teenagers and early 20-somethings who are dating people in their 30s. And by the way, I was one. I dated a 32-year-old when I was 21 until I was 24, and they were 35 or whatever. Those younger folks usually are pretty mature in certain ways, usually pretty smart in certain ways, and sometimes that's because they've experienced lifetimes where they had to grow up really fast, in which case I don't think it's ideal necessarily for them to be dating so high above their age bracket. And then maybe they're just super mature naturally, and that's fine too. We still want to consider, though, is the older person actually taking the most care that they could? Because if a young person is super mature, then yes, maybe everything is fine. But again, the age gap makes an inherent power differential, which creates some inherent risk. And here's the thing about intimacy and caring about someone. Do you want to expose someone to risk, and how much risk are you willing to expose them to that they might look back on something and regret it later? If you're really into them and you're really caring about them, then would it be possible to say, like, well, maybe we'll wait, and see how long this connection lasts, before getting into a dating or sexual relationship, to ensure that it's something that we both really want. And also the younger person will have gotten older in that time. And so maybe it's better to connect, when they're a little bit older. To a younger person, I might say, like, it's great that you like this older person. I think that age gaps can be tricky sometimes. And I would hope that, like, there are, first of all, people you can go to if the relationship starts to go kind of weird and it's not feeling good. And also, I would really hope that there are explicit conversations happening between the older person and the younger person about the age gap and how are things feeling. And, I believe that, yes, for sure, people should be allowed to date in, like, their February, October romance, if that's like their one true love, or, OTP, whatever. That's all fine and good if both people are willing to take the risk and they understand it. I also think it's quite a bit different than, say, a 21-year-old dating a 21-year-old, or like a 21-year-old dating a 24-year-old, when there's like a whole decade in difference, and that decade is significant, like the 20s, right? Like a 40-year-old dating a 50-year-old is, to me, in my mind, kind of fine. And like, we don't need to worry about that too much. But a 21-year-old and a 32-year-old, I would really think about that carefully. I would say that, the older person needs to explicitly take on a role of more responsibility. Like, the older person probably should be responsible for holding up their end of the communication in a clear and mature and consentful way. And that pressure is more on them than it is on the younger person. And what I really worry about when I see these kinds of age gap romances is that sometimes the younger person actually is holding up way more of the pieces around doing consentful communication, explicit communication, like emotional maturity, because that's kind of how things are for young people who are mature for their age, is that they actually get a lot of pressure and responsibility that maybe they shouldn't have to have. And that's why they are more mature for their age. It's kind of a horrible cycle. Young people should be allowed to be young and be messy. And those of us who are older, it's kind of on us socially to step into the role of taking on a bit more responsibility. Again, that for the older person in the relationship, there probably needs to be some thinking about how am I going to make sure that this relationship is consentful and that it's emotionally safe, and how am I going to make it clear that I'm going to hold more of the responsibility in that case than the younger person. And that might be an awkward conversation to have. And guess what? Having romance is just a series of awkward conversations, so we might as well get better at them. Well, that's my take on the age gap romance. That's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ask Kai, Quick Tips for the Apocalypse. Stay safe, wash your hands, and I think it's okay to meet people in the park, or if you're both vaccinated and you can just have fun outdoors or maybe indoors. I don't know. Just look at the guide, read the newspaper, watch the TV. We're all doing our best. Do your best to stay safe and be well.